another edition of the Unicorns podcast. This is a podcast series featuring business leaders, motivators, innovators, and general go-getters. Welcome to another episode of the Unicorns podcast, where we delve into the minds behind transformative innovations that are shaping our world. In today's episode, I'm delighted to be speaking with Shane Muller, the visionary CEO and founder of SafeWatch, which is a groundbreaking app that is set to change the mental health landscape here in Australia and eventually overseas. With alarming rates of anxiety and depression plaguing communities globally, Shane's journey of entrepreneurship has led him to develop SafeWatch, an ingenious solution aimed at addressing the critical factors of isolation, connectedness, and prevention. His commitment to fostering human connections and supporting mental well-being shines through SafeWatch's unique features, which seamlessly blend technology with compassionate care. Shane's passion for mental health advocacy and technology innovation has propelled SafeWatch to the forefront of the industry. By championing a village approach to mental wellness, Shane and his team have created a platform that empowers users to embark on journeys towards improved mental health, all while fostering a sense of togetherness and support. In this episode, we'll explore the inspiration behind SafeWatch, its key features, and the impact it's poised to make in combating social isolation and destigmatizing mental health challenges. Shane Muller, welcome to the program.
Hello, Justin.
Okay, can you share, Shane, with us the inspiration behind the creation of SafeWatch and how it addresses the many issues in the mental health ecosystem?
Absolutely. The inspiration around mental wellness and addressing this, Justin, started, I would say, pre-pandemic, 2019, when I looked at the alarming statistics of mental wellness challenges and issues at that time. What got my attention was the rate of growth of this challenge here in Australia and throughout the world. And with that added on the fact that it appeared very, very silent. You were not able to tell if someone was currently challenged with, say, some form of anxiety or depression or what have you. Those 2 points really was the reason why I embarked to actually set out. I wouldn't call it SafeWatch because it wasn't called that back then.
Didn't exist. Yes,
exactly. Literally set out to create something to solve this challenge that exists here locally and around the world. It's that silent aspect.
You've come up with the concept. You've thought about it hard. How did you go from that initial, I've got an idea, I want to do something that is going to change people's lives, to create that into an actual living, breathing business?
Great question. I'm a huge advocate and fan of knowing purpose behind doing things. Said another way, being able to answer the big why. I mentioned this point in 2019. So at the start of 2020, I took literally 12 months to sit on, brew, simmer,
marinate.
Yeah, absolutely. The one topic called why, or what's the purpose? Why do this? I often spend a lot of time on the topic of why, because why, at the end of the day, you need that purpose, because when you hit some rough terrain, that answer is actually the fuel to get you past the tough seasons. So having spent a whole why, I actually looked at this landscape, and a couple of things came out in the research I did. The first one was, when people experience a challenge with reference to mental wellness, and on the very, very extreme end, it is unfortunate that many people choose to exit life and to suicide. Now, what I did was I didn't actually look at necessarily the causes, but I looked at what happens after someone chooses to exit. And one of the few themes that came up was the people who were around, their dearest, closest friends and family, best mates, etc., when they were asked a question, figuratively, what happened? The most common phrase that came out was, I had no idea. Or a variation to that would be, I didn't think it was that bad.
Or a third one, I wish I knew.
That's exactly right. I wish I knew is something that really is a very huge burden for someone to carry for the rest of their life, questioning what signs or cues they may have missed. And these signs or cues could be, you sit next to a colleague for 10 years and one day they're gone. And you got to live with, what on earth did I miss there? Or it could be someone in your own household. And these things happen quite often. So that was the first point. The second point was these people who would have that question, I wish I knew, they didn't lack love or care. They simply missed the cues. In its most simplest form, they missed the cues. So with that aspect, with those few points, we literally picked that up and decided to use technology to build something whereby we could say, if someone uses SafeWatch, they will never, ever, ever have to say, I had no idea. They may have to live with, I didn't do anything, but not have to live with, I had no idea. And that was really the essence of starting SafeWatch. And that literally was one whole year on the year 2020. And then I think it was January 2021, I set out to form the who and the how and the what.
And is that how you develop this whole notion of the village approach in developing SafeWatch? Tell us about what you mean by the village approach, Shane.
So I'll first explain the landscape of what I saw with reference to mental wellness apps in the marketplace. And I'll also explain another piece of research that came up, and that is when people start to gravitate to the risk end of the spectrum, when people start to really get challenged with their mental wellness, two things often come up. A, isolation in their life increases. And B, the use of tech increases. And, scratching the surface, most tech, I would say, is pretty bad tech. You don't tend to typically go and spend 2-3 hours on tech and walk away going, life's fantastic. It doesn't typically happen like that. Tech has this very alluring ability. And the more it lures you, it also has this ability to almost to numb you. And I'm talking being drawn into tech for a long time, not using tech for education and other purposes. So the isolation was critical. Then when we looked at 1,500 odd apps in the marketplace, and there's a staggering amount of apps coming out every year in this space in mental wellness, most of them fit into about 3 dominant categories. The first one is it is an app to do with breathing, meditation, etc., which, by the way, there's sound science and reason for that, but a lot of it fits there.
They're all worthwhile.
Exactly. The second dominant category was sleeping, tools to help with sleep, similar to the first, but it's specifically on sleeping. And again, significant research shows that actually is a huge benefit. And the third category would be apps that provide information, education around a challenge. So it could have a questionnaire, but it'll actually help someone understand, this is my anxiety I'm struggling from. It's almost like teaching about and training about the challenge. So most of the apps seem to fit in those 3 categories. So what we decided to do was we needed to address this aspect I mentioned before about isolation. In some of the reviews we've done, isolation seems to be increasing and increasing, especially at an opposite rate of people being connected out there. And when I say connected, I mean the popular term for connected, being through social media and being just connected with many, many people. So as more and more people are connected, we've seen that isolation keeps increasing. The number of people you're connected with has no equal relationship to how non-isolated one person is. So what we set out to do was to address, fundamentally, that isolation aspect. Because as soon as people start to isolate, most people lose their grip or hold or ability to support someone. And by the way, you can be in the middle of a 40-person family lunch and feel very isolated. It does not have to do with the immediate surrounding. You just could be isolated in two areas, in your heart and in your mind. Do you know what I mean? And it is a very lonely place for people who actually go through that. So that's what we needed to do. The second thing is we looked at the statistics here in Australia, which mirrored much of the statistics overseas. In Australia, with over, say, 4+ million people at this time struggling from a mental wellness condition, and about 45,000 mental health practitioners in the country. Those two numbers are, there's a huge void between those two numbers. So we needed to come up with something to address this large net. If, there's 4 million plus people struggling, what is the largest net out there that we could use? So the concept of the village approach is what we adopted. Now, there's research commenced, I believe it's King's College in the UK. And that research says that if someone is struggling from a wellness condition and they do life in a community, they increase the speed of recovery by about 89-90%. That's the first point. The second point is if a person chooses to contain and remain in a community, the probability of them staying buoyant significantly increases. And as I mentioned, the opposite of community is that isolation. So we chose to go out there, adopt that concept, which we call the village approach. It is essentially about allowing people and enabling them to build their village or their care community or their care world. And through that, ensure that there is transparency, people have their back, and they're not in isolation with reference to how they're truly feeling.
SafeWatch, Shane, is described as a transformative tool with many layers. Can you elaborate on some of those layers and how they contribute to the mental wellness of users?
Absolutely. So the first one is, as I mentioned, the key element here is ensuring people capture the concept and value of building their village. And mind you, if a person only had 2 people in their village, that still works, because the quantity of people, unlike social media where the number of followers or friends typically means how good you are, the quantity of people isn't the key when it comes to the village, but the caliber. So typically one would have the following types of people in their village. A, people who know them, friends and family. B, sometimes they will have people who can help them if they are seeing a practitioner. Some people are not. And C, people who would get them. Often very different to the first category, people who know them. If you want a good example, listen to many parents' conversations with their teenagers. There's just a lot of, well, certainly from the adolescent's point of view, you just don't get me. It is a very, very, very dominant thinking right now in that space. So these are the types of people. So with reference to that first layer, it is an ability for people to, A, track how they're feeling. Now, the concept of tracking feelings in itself, that's not rocket science. But what we're doing here is being able to track your feelings for the first point, for one's own visual ability, for one themselves to learn the ups and downs that they go through and in what area. That's the first point. The second point, it is to be able to share that with those who actually have your back, not the masses, not associates, but people who one person would be vulnerable with. So in addition to that, these people in the village have an ability to actually share their observations on how you appear to them. And it's quite interesting. If you look at the statistics, you might find that the average type of person might rate you in the workplace as a 6, but why is it everyone in your home rating you as a 3? And your best mates rate you as something else. It provides a very rich view of the different facets people have, or as I would say quite boldly, it provides a rich view of the masks that people actually carry. Because it is easy to, click your fingers and just go game on and get up on a stage, or, go play that game and, you're at your peak performance, but then drop afterwards.
Yeah, what happens afterwards?
It's the drop. And so what we found in our research, especially with high performers and people who are of prominence, the image is really what people draw out of the person. And the image becomes very, very different to the authentic person themselves, to the point whereby that individual doesn't even have anyone to go to share the real them, because the world demands to see the image of them, the star.
So, Shane, the app is designed, as I understand it, for 3 types of users. You've got the individuals, the mental health professionals, and also trusted supporters. So how do they all interact? Can you give us an example of, logging into the app? This is physically how it all works and comes together.
Absolutely. I'll use a scenario of someone, John Smith going and seeing his psychologist, Sharon, hypothetically. So firstly, John Smith would use the app on a daily basis, track John's feelings, moods, be able to enter some keywords for context to help John work out, John's own patterns. That's point 1. Point 2, people in John's world, his village, these carers, as you call them, every time they engage with John in whatever manner, they have the ability to use the app. Very simple, few clicks. We're talking less than a minute. It's as if I'm talking to you, it'll take me less than a minute to go, I think Justin's a 7, or whatever the number is. It's as simple as that.
The individual has to invite his or her trusted supporters to download the app, log in. Okay, yeah.
Exactly. Once the individual has built their village, and the inviting happens through a sharing of a QR code, you can't barge in. You can't force your way into anyone's village.
Very good.
You can't use advertising to get your name to be high on the list to entice someone, like many of the social media platforms. It's a very private, intimate village and group. So these people are able to share how John is feeling based on their observations. And then John goes and sees his psychologist, Sharon. Now, an example there, most professionals spend 5 to 20 minutes, and it depends on the scenario, but often 5 to 20 minutes with the opening question. So how was the last 3 weeks? It's tough for someone to remember that if they're not struggling. It really is tough. How do you summarize? And what they choose to highlight is typically may or may not be the ideal point. So there's a lot of time wasted at that start. Here, John and his professional Sharon, she's able to actually look at the data pre-John walking in, literally like a stock ticker, be able to see the last 3 weeks or 6 weeks, see patterns. How's John been tracking? How are people in John's world rating? How has John been rated by other people who are actually there where Sharon is not? And Sharon's able to go pinpoint, okay, John, let's talk about Thursday the 17th, 4 o'clock. You hit a 2 there, and you said it's to do with relational issues. Just let's talk about that. You're able to really be very focused, which is very, very powerful. We've had patients with lived experience. Patients tell us when they go and see a counselor, they don't actually want to remember last Thursday when it was really bad because it was such a dark place. They actually they rather not talk about it. So with this tool, they're able to literally capture it in the moment and then pass by. So essentially, Sharon, that psychologist, ends up having John's view, but she's got all these camera angle lenses from everyone in John's village. Each camera paints a very different and collectively.
I should point out, we're talking about a metaphorical camera.
Agree.
A figurative camera.
Essentially. But yeah, so it paints a very rich picture with reference to how patient John is going. So that's that point. The next one, most professionals would give a patient what's called a care plan. You need to, I recommend you do certain activities at this frequency, go read this, etc., whatever the scenario dictates. Now, most of the time, a lot of patients maybe think they might remember that. They might write on a note, whatever they may do with that. But now, with SafeWatch, that care plan actually is saved within SafeWatch digitally, and it's in your pocket everywhere you go for patient John. Furthermore, let's take one scenario. Let's go, a psychologist, go do some activities. Go do walking 3 times a week, and you need to go to the cinema once a month. Just as hypotheticals. Now, let's take the concept of the body. If someone says to you go to the gym, you got to be quite disciplined to go to the gym. But if your buddy knocks on your door at 6 a.m., the chance of you going is significantly higher.
That's true.
So the people in the village, John's able to share activities with people in his village who are not only there to support him, but they end up being accountability buddies to help John get on and do something like an activity. And that then increases the chance of John doing it. Then there's another observation point for that person in the village to share how they're feeling. And essentially what happens here, and as one of our health practitioners said, they finally now with SafeWatch, the burden of care no longer rests solely on their shoulders, where they would see a patient once every 3 weeks for 50 minutes. Now they can essentially solicit or enlist their patient's village to be scaffolding to support the patient for all the time that they're not in the clinical setting, and then give them tools and techniques and help essentially that small care community come around and assume the responsibility, keep an eye, keep tabs on John.
I want to ask you, Shane, about how SafeWatch ensures privacy and data security. I'm sure this has come up before, so give us a sense of how all of this information is protected.
Absolutely. So there is an aspect of security and there's an aspect of privacy. We say to the marketplace that we keep your data private, including from us. And that's a very, very critical aspect. Now, I'll take a step back. My background is in technology, and there's a lot I could speak about, which I won't right now around cybersecurity. But if you look at it, billion-dollar businesses are being they've been brought to their knees with cybercrime and exposure of data. Those who are actually spending good dollars to protect it, it still happens out there. And if you look at the rate of growth of cyber breaches, it's staggering, and it'll be only a matter of time. And I say this with all care, but it's only a matter of time before mental wellness apps start to get breached. And I feel that's going to lead to some catastrophic outcomes, because it's not that there's financial or other type of information, but it is something that it's vulnerable data to people. So we decided to build something that is very disruptive within the marketplace. We decided to build something whereby no one has access to data other than each individual. Even our senior administrators and development team cannot access data that's saved on the system. We've created a unique composable key technology that writes data to something called an IPFS network, interplanetary file system, that then intermittently pegs that to a blockchain. Now, said another way, every time someone registers, they create their key with no backup key. If someone's locked out, they can't call us. And I only know one company on the planet that has something similar to this, and that will be Bitcoin, where even the technical people can't get in. If we're subpoenaed, we can't get in because we don't have access to Justin's data, Justin chooses if he wants to share something with Shane or not, or with his GP or not. Justin chooses, and the data is spread.
So the power's with the user.
We're literally putting privacy in the individual's hands with no backdoor in to their journal, to their feelings, to their mood, to their most intimate information.
I'm keen to know how the app is going. It's not long been launched into market. What has the user experience been? What are both individuals saying about the app? What are healthcare professionals saying about the app? And what are those within the supporter network of an individual? What's their reaction been?
Absolutely. So we only just launched at the end of the year, which was a very interesting time because a lot of things happen in the Christmas, January break, certainly in Australia, that is not normal throughout the rest of the year. With reference to the feedback we've had, and I'll clarify this is feedback that we've received directly because we don't have access to the data to give feedback based on usage. But we've had feedback. One example is a mum shared to a health practitioner about her, I think she was a 13-year-old daughter, said, do you know what? Now with SafeWatch, for the first time ever, I actually know how my daughter's feeling, which was actually quite remarkable to actually have that feedback. We've had another patient say, just actually not a patient, they were a user, using SafeWatch, finally, I'm actually able to see where I'm at. This is someone trying to gain self-awareness. They're finally able to see where they're at and then actually see these swings of ups and downs. Which is quite staggering. We've had health practitioners that we've spoken to come back and say the concept with reference to the village is 100% spot on. It is a significant enabler to a practitioner. It doesn't take away from them, but it gives them so much enablement to ensure that care, once the person leaves their clinical room, is sustained and not just within the clinical setting. We've had some government health agencies liaising with us, seeking to actually roll this out for a lot of primary health care providers. So we've actually had quite a few positive feedback points in a very short time since we've launched. And mind you, we didn't do a major boost of awareness to let the world know we've launched either.
In terms of let's just say someone is listening to this podcast and they'd like to download the app and start using it. What is that user experience? What is the workflow, Shane, for an individual to get started on SafeWatch? How does that happen?
Absolutely. So right now, if someone wants to trial the app, you go to the Google Play Store or the Apple App Store. You search SafeWatch, you'll see a SafeWatch similar with a logo of SafeWatch. You download the app. Once you've downloaded it, you click register, and you can register today as two different types of personas, as we call them. One is a typical user, which is what most people register as, or the second is a health professional. So let's say someone downloads it, registers as a user, they put in a name, pins, etc., and that's it. It takes, depending on the internet, it'll take a minute to download and register. It's very simple. Once they've done that, then the key aspect is to build their village. So they go to a best mate, a family, a sister, whomever, and say, hey, download this. They do the same thing. It takes less than a minute. Once 2+ people have the app, it's a matter of one person inviting the other to connect. You click on a button called Connect and invite someone to join your village. And how you do that is one person has a camera, one person has a QR, and you scan a QR. Thankfully, I shouldn't say it thankfully, but I will. Now that with COVID, QR scanning is certainly not a foreign concept. Everyone knows how to do that. 2019 might have been a bit different. So you literally scan a QR, and as soon as that's done, that person's part of your village.
And you start building from there.
You start building your village from there, then you start tracking your feelings. Villagers can start tracking their observations of feelings. You can start creating activities. There's some learning material on certain topics, etc. Same thing, you go and see a health practitioner. It's a QR scan with your health practitioner. The practitioner is not sharing their email address or mobile phone or any private information. They're literally scanning a QR to get connected. It is not a backdoor in to always talk to a practitioner. It is a means for a practitioner to deliver the care plan and see the insights on the patient.
And what happens in the event, Shane, that someone hasn't quite progressed to seeing a healthcare professional, but they would like to explore the app? Can they start that process without already having a professional off to the side and talking and dealing with them?
So we have a version that we call SafeWatch for You. There is SafeWatch for practitioners, but not everyone has a health practitioner. As a matter of fact, most don't. In Australia, the average wait time for a practitioner is about 6 months. That's a long time to wait when you really need someone.
Too long.
It is. I have also found out in certain countries overseas, as a matter of fact, I just came back from Hong Kong, the average wait time for health practitioner there is 130 weeks, which is staggering.
It's unbelievable.
It's just a demonstration of the gap, the size of the problem versus the army of people who actually can address this challenge being health practitioners. But going back to it, so a person can download the app. We have had feedback saying when someone's waiting for a practitioner, if they start using SafeWatch, track their feelings and do all of these things, the day they see their practitioner, it's almost like, here, I'm bringing an entire logbook to you.
Here's my folder.
Exactly.
Here's my tax return.
Absolutely. They straight away are able to gain some very, very, very rich insights straight away. That's number one. Number two, we have had some clinical practitioners say, you know what, instead of and this was a consideration, it wasn't a decision. They said, instead of doing the FIFO model, which is, I have this list of 30 people waiting on a wait list, take the top one from the list all the time. If they use SafeWatch, we can do it triage based on the patterns of what we see, which is very powerful.
So a final question to you, Shane, and I could talk to you for hours on this. In what ways do you see SafeWatch contributing to the broader conversation surrounding mental health awareness and the destigmatization of mental health?
The stigma element, Justin, is a genuine challenge we have out there in the marketplace. There's a lot of voices out there on all sorts of platforms and stages about, raise the challenge, raise the awareness, talk about your problems, etc., etc. There's a lot of talk about that. Interestingly, it's tough to ask someone in certain settings to come out and talk about a wellness problem you're having. Maybe in a home setting, a best friend setting, absolutely. I'll take two examples. In the context of a workplace setting, the stigma is significant. It's challenging and it's significant. Or in the context of another example would be in politics. How could you say to an MP, if you're struggling with severe depression, anxiety, just come out and say it? The challenge is the system of politics doesn't have a place for that person who comes out and says that.
That's true.
The establishment of politics doesn't have a pigeonhole or a place for that. The fabric and the establishment of the workplace, it's challenging as well, because as good and important as it is to come out and speak about it, doing so for someone who's focused on growing in their career, seeking more responsibilities or seeking more pay, that's a tough conversation to have at the same time as I'm struggling. It really is going to be a tough conversation. And most people in the workplace approach this as a very high care factor, not, okay, what more a responsibility and promotion and pay can I give you? So the stigma is a genuine challenge. Now, how we are addressing that, Justin, is not by going after this aspect of stigma, because our view is it might even take a generation because there's so much embedded within the system. But what we're doing is we're focusing on people building resilience and mental fitness. Focusing on resilience building and mental fitness doesn't have a negative stigma. As a matter of fact, it's quite positive. It's like having a personal trainer. It doesn't matter how one looks. If they say they have a personal trainer, most people think, wow, okay, you're going somewhere, or, fantastic.
Things are looking up. Yes.
Exactly. So we addressing this from a mental fitness and a mental resilience aspect. That's how we're addressing this, working around the stigma.
Shane Muller, founder and CEO of SafeWatch. We love what you're doing. It's a fantastic product. Best of luck on the rollout of SafeWatch. Well done on what you've created. Thank you for coming onto the show and your valued insights today. Good luck.
Thank you, Justin.